One of the beauties of this project are the parallels that you can draw between the journey that this site has taken, so to speak, and the journey that Spalding's patients take and will take in this new facility. This site started out dilapidated and hurt and not really at its best use. And through tremendous dedication of a lot of people, this site has now been rehabilitated. And if you sort of think about what the patients at Spalding go through, where they're trying to overcome challenges and they're trying to meet recovery milestones in their process, and ultimately they are rehabilitating themselves.
Being able to rely with confidence on the knowledge and expertise of Haley and Aldrich to know, in effect, all of what they needed to know from a regulatory perspective to advise us on what we needed to do and to ensure that we got it all done, in a way that would give us the kind of confidence to operate a hospital on this site.
When Partners Real Estate and Spalding Rehab approached us about potentially taking over this site for the new Spalding Hospital, the first thing we had to do was figure out what were the environmental impacts from these former activities.
It's always important to have your client educated on what it is that you're trying to do. So I think it's important to balance the regulations and professional ethics that the LSPs do have to exercise, as well as the client demands and their financial constraints they may have.
In Massachusetts, we have this wonderful framework within which we make decisions as environmental professionals, as LSPs. We sort of understand the guideposts and understand the rules, but we don't have to wait for the regulators to buy in every step of the way. We can proceed. And in other states where I practice, those time periods of waiting can actually kill a project.
Fortunately, in Massachusetts, as a privatized state, that really allowed us to move the project forward a lot more expeditiously.
The site is relatively quiet right now. I can hear a seagull in the background. Doesn't look like anything exciting happened here. But a little over a year ago, there was a big barge sitting out in this inner slip, and there were probably 2 or 3 dozen workers. Big crane was dredging material, swinging it over, placing it into the inner slip. Before our cleanup started, we had sheen on surface water in the inner slip. It extended into the outer slip, and we had to capture that with adsorbent booms and that sort of thing. We were keeping an eye. We'd collected samples and sediment and some of the biota at the bottom, clams and fish, to observe the conditions there. Our goal was to create a reusable property, obviously. Cleaning up this slip was one of the first steps that we needed to complete in order to make this former industrial property available for redevelopment. The solidified material is perfectly suitable for constructing a building on, having a parking lot. People can walk across it without fear of exposure to those contaminants. So yes, one of the primary purposes of that cleanup was to make this property available for redevelopment and productive reuse.
At GEI, we have constructed housing developments on contaminated properties. We've built parks on contaminated properties, built bridges and worked on tunneling projects. About any type of project that you can imagine can now be constructed on contaminated properties.
The LSP program really encourages a high level of dialogue and participation by the most skilled people for these types of projects.
The LSP program in Massachusetts is a mature program.
I think this is a great example of how the LSP program can allow a really complicated site go from design to permitting to regulatory closure in a very short period of time.
I think it's very challenging work being an LSP, but it's also very rewarding.
Cleaning up contaminated properties is a fascinating job. We work on all sorts of different projects.
I think as an LSP, you're always trying to solve that puzzle and that mystery of how the contamination got there and where it ended up. So I think that's the challenging part. It makes it fun. No site, 2 sites are the same.
We have a big set of regulations that we need to comply with. That's part of our charge. But we can also use a lot of creativity and also be advocating for our clients while we're complying with the regulations.
The LSP Association, or the LSPA, is the professional society for licensed site professionals and other environmental professionals who are charged with cleaning up hazardous waste sites in Massachusetts. LSPs are licensed by the state, and they are highly regulated in terms of their professional background, their experience, and they work very closely with a set of regulations called the Massachusetts Contingency Plan.
The most important thing is to lay the framework of what the ultimate goal is for the project, first of all. Where do you want to be with this project? And that will help define what it is that you might want to do, because there are different strategies to go through the MCP and different levels of cleanup.
Being an LSP has been a very interesting and challenging career. Not only have I been able to clean up contaminated properties and feel like I've helped do something good in the world, but I've also worked on a wide variety of different types of cleanups with many different types of challenges.
The other part that's most, I find satisfying is when the project's completed, the client is very happy with the work, and there's either a building or some other type of redevelopment where you can drive by the particular project and note that you had something to do with that project and solve some of the problems and issues that it did have. Oftentimes find ourselves in community meetings and having to give presentations on our findings and what our work scope is going to be. So I think it's real important to be upfront with what the issues are and not be afraid to talk about them.
It's my responsibility as the LSP to make sure I'm doing the right thing to protect people and the environment. We rely on the regulators to look over our shoulder into this program and the MCP and question decisions I've made, but what it does is it provides flexibility and creativity in finding the right solutions for the property.
L is for the licenses we're granted. S is for the sites dear to our hearts. P just lets you know we've been to college, but put them all together and the magic starts. LSP, LSP, there's no higher calling and no better thing